ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us here today. I'm here with Mr. Edgar Papke. Edgar and I became friends over the last year plus when we were introduced to each other by other Regis alum. Got to find out that Edgar is a double alum of our university, and I've been excited to have Edgar come and work with us in the Anderson College of Business on setting up some executive ed because he's a fantastic thinker. He sees the world in a way that helps us all, and especially business, as we're thinking about how business intersects with the human world. And he's just an overall good human being. So Edgar, thanks for joining us today.
And likewise, thanks for letting me join you. It's great.
So the hope of these conversations for the Alumni Matrix is that you, as an alumni, as a student, as a faculty, staff member, as a friend of ours in the business community, we want to inspire and intrigue you a little bit about what we're trying to create here at Regis with this. And one of the things we did this year was to bring you two of our alumni who have authored some books. So Edgar, I'll get to the book authoring, but really I want to ask you a little bit about you. So in terms of introducing yourself to our community, you have this wonderfully unique and dare I say winding background that brought you to this work you do now. Can you give some of those highlights and touch on some of those unique things that are in spirit in everything that you do currently?
Yeah. Well, I started my working career when I was 13. I come from a family, we're immigrants. I'm originally from Germany, and so work ethic and earning your own way was something that was a key influence in our family for my two brothers and I growing up. And so a lot of what we would call at the time, even a pair of blue jeans was considered a bit of a luxury. And so we had to work for what we wanted. So I graduated high school early when I was 17, and worked in construction, and then started a career in insurance as a high-risk insurance underwriter. And after 7 years of that, decided I didn't want to spend my entire life doing that at the time. Of course, youth looking out into the future. And so I left that and I went to culinary school. Cooking and culinary arts are a true passion of mine. And I went to the Culinary Institute of America, became a chef, and then an executive chef for a hotel, and then went on to be a restaurateur and run a food service company. And I did that for 10 years. And then found that I wasn't spending enough time with my family. And so I made a life-changing decision and made the transition to go back to school. Found my way from the New York area after selling. I was the majority shareholder of the business I was in. Sold that and then moved to Colorado, here in Louisville, Colorado, just outside of Boulder, and went back to school and earned 2 degrees at Regis University. The first one in international business administration, and then a second, a master's degree in psychology with a focus on leadership psychology. And now since 1989, as part of that transition, what I do is I do leadership development, organizational development, and coaching. So I do consulting, coaching, and extensive level of speaking for the last 20 years. And have written 3 books on the work that I do. True Alignment, which is the framework that I developed around alignment of business around the idea of it being a human art form. That led to a book on conflict, because every misalignment in our lives and in our businesses results in a conflict that presents an opportunity for alignment and confronting and managing those conflicts in an opportunistic and constructive way. So that led to the writing of the book, The Elephant in the Boardroom. And then more recently, research into what makes organizations innovative is innovation by design, which is the identification of the attributes of that are common to 21 of the most innovative organizations in the world. And I did that research and co-authored that with a good friend of mine, Tom Lockwood.
Yeah, and so, that work is all, first of all, that background that you have.
How's that? Did that cover enough?
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And I think this is important because rarely do any of us have a straight arrow to where we've come. But I want to highlight some of these things that you mentioned in the books that you've authored and in that experience. Is that this idea that it's work to get the things that you need and want.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that there's passion in all of us. And courage when we make decisions. You mentioned that kind of life-altering decision that you weren't spending enough time with family, and you move nearly across the country to set up a new life. The idea that a little older and you choose to go back to school. The idea that you mix these two things of international business and psychology in leadership and come to know what we all should know, is that business is ultimately a human thing. And then you work on these, you work on your professional work now, this coaching and speaking. The thing that I love about your work and your writing is, and the work we've done in the Innovation Center, is sometimes the best innovation is looking at things more simply, things we've already known and we've forgotten, rather than looking for something we can't yet find. And I think your work does a lot in that. Can you talk a little bit about that that model that you speak to, which is really the basics of every business is a human business, where you mix that psychology of leadership with business?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for your kind words in the way that you describe it. And so thank you for that. The lens that I look at it through, and as you said, is simple, because that's the art of complexities and simplicity. So the idea being that business is the most advanced art form that we participate in as human beings globally. And it's just mind-boggling to think how powerful it is. Art is the emotional expression, the creative expression of human emotion, which stems from our desires and needs. And what we do in business, and we've been at it for thousands of years, and what innovation is actually creating in business products and services that respond to human desire and need, that respond to human emotion.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it all work. And we are so good at it. And when you step back and realize that every person on the face of the planet 24 hours a day is a customer of a product and user of a product or service in one shape, form, or another, is just absolutely breathtaking. Yeah. How good we are. And that all art forms, when you think about music, writing, whatever the art form is, winds up being industry. And the reason that it becomes industry is because of that deep human connection that we have in everything in our world. And so we begin with that simple premise. We begin with understanding human desire, need, and motivation. And from there, we can better understand how we market, how we sell, how we create. And innovation is nothing more really than solving a problem. And the problem that always exists in our lives, and where creativity comes from, is that we're in a current state and we want to move to a desired future state. And that tension, that natural conflict, is where all the innovation is. So it's all about emotion. It's all about need and desire.
Yeah, I love that. And Edgar, in your work, you take that that framework through all the rest of the work that you do, mm-hmm. and you bring in these constructs of alignment. And I thought I had loaded the book into my bag when we were kicked out of work and we had to all retreat to our homes, but I didn't. And you have a piece of writing in one of your books that says, and I think it's in True Alignment, it says that the most important thing that makes a business successful is that they've created this alignment from that human desire, that human emotion, that human need, through how they structure their work and how they think about the world that work impacts. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so when we speak to alignment, you can see it occur at all different levels. One is the alignment of how the product or service responds and aligns to the customer experience, which aligns to the customer motivation. So we call it the UX, the user experience, customer experience, and our, at the university now, you and I are, and you're working on the student experience. And so what is the alignment of how it is that we behave towards, communicate with, act towards the customer, how our product and service creates an alignment to that motivation that the customer has. And then in our branding, our messaging, how do we align internally and externally? How do we align internally our strategies, our vision and our strategies? So vision is a desired future state. Strategies are, I simply define it as a change plan. How do we get there? So how do we align our activities and our decision-making to the brand, to the product and service, all the way back out to the customer? And then how do we create internally within our organizations and teams cultures to where how we behave towards one another is in alignment to the customer experience? Because eventually what happens is the customer experiences the culture of our organizations, and that applies to any size business, whether it's early stage or a small, even a 1 or 2 person organization needs to align how they function with the customer experience. And then ultimately leadership. And the alignment of leadership is just so fascinating, because not only are leaders responsible for creating aligned strategies for how the organization delivers to the customer, it's also a matter of self-awareness and how leaders understand their own behaviors and their own motivations, their own passions, and how they align, again, to the organization, its goals, its vision, how they align, and to the customer experience. And just to add one more note to this is that one of the things that we've discovered in this work is that the more aligned a leader's own motivations are in terms of what drives their behavior, the more aligned is to the customer experience and customer expectation, the higher the degree of success. And so with every alignment, it also creates a space to interpret and understand our misalignments. Yeah. Misalignments cause conflict, and therefore those conflicts are the moments of opportunity to create greater alignment, which result in greater levels of innovation, greater levels of creative problem solving. And so that idea of alignment, and for leaders, it's alignment to our values, our beliefs, who we really, really are at the core of our heart and soul, and how we bring that to the world.
Yeah, this is
power and influence that carries.
Yeah, I think this ties in directly to this whole stewardship construct in our business school.
Very much so.
Yeah, but also the roots of our Jesuit education from St. Ignatius, which really were based in this: how do you find the time to listen to your inner workings, right? I mean, those were the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. Yeah. And they might be more important right now today, as the world around us is changing just as we know it. We're all in our homes separate. Normally we'd be doing this on a stage in a tent in the parking lot, where everybody had food and beer to drink. But here we are in our homes doing this. So in your Innovation by Design book, you take and you highlight these businesses that have successfully found some of that alignment, and you highlight where they've struggled and what they've learned, and you bring in a lot of those constructs of design thinking into that book, and you introduce that. Because we've worked together, that I'm a big fan of design thinking. I think one of the reasons that I'm a big fan of design thinking is that I love the fact that you can fool almost anybody who doesn't know about it to think the first thing you do when you're working on a problem is not to define that problem or do anything with it, but is just to start listening.
Yeah, that art of inquiry and listening and fearlessly exploring the potential of what others have to, and the power of what others can share with you. And you're right, that goes also, and it is, if you're not aware of your inner workings, I think one of the most powerful aspects and why I find such an alignment to the Jesuit philosophy and approach to leadership is this idea of self-awareness and being present in the moment. I think that if we're not present in the moment, it's difficult to be aware of how we're listening. It's difficult to be aware of our own fears and defenses that get in the way of our listening to others better. Yeah, it's so powerful just to understand the importance. What you're talking about here is just the importance of being able to inquire with empathy to understand someone else's point of view, which leads to what great innovation is about. Yeah, in leadership by design, we look at conflict as that source of innovation, and we use the term curious confrontation. Confrontation is to face to the truth. Curiosity is to seek the truth, which is an aspect of great leadership. Is I sometimes think the true role of leadership is to seek the truth and bring it to light.
Yeah, no, that's a great insight that you've helped share with me and hone with me this last months that we've been working together, and I've been able to pay attention to the way you interact in the world, Edgar. And it's so from the graciousness and the gratitude of in this time, just saying thank you for stuff. I mean, that's a part of you that invites people in their wholeness into conversation to find things out. There's a lot being written right now as the world is changing around us about we're glorifying some of these kind of productive individuals that are finding time to reconstruct their homes and new business ideas and launch volunteer programs and do all of this. And there's a lot of writing coming out right now about don't get caught into the trap. Perhaps we're blessed a little bit with an invitation now to figure out a little bit of our inner workings and really contemplate how we can communicate with people, that curious confrontation that you mentioned, how we can find out about people and invite those truths to come forward before we come up with solutions. What advice would you give? What advice would you give people that are in an existing business or thinking about starting a new business right now, the way the world is going forward?
I think one of the aspects that I reflect on in this current crisis is that need for connectivity, and to be open to that, and also because we're so drawn to wanting to be, it's a natural desire that we all have for inclusiveness and community. Is also to be aware of how we're using it. And so I think connectivity and how we use connectivity right now is very important. So that piece. Another one is through that connectivity is the exchange of ideas and using inquiry and listening to one another. Sometimes the desire for connectivity is fulfilled by how much it is that we talk and how much we extend ourselves outwardly to get attention. I think giving attention and listening and being patient listeners right now and advocating that, I think, is certainly important. And I do think that right now, allowing yourself time to be still and to be contemplative and to think and think and create an awareness of how we can use this opportunity to come back to our own alignment to who we are and what we can offer the world becomes a really important aspect. One of the things I've known in the 30 years of doing this work is that I find myself very often to having a conversation with leaders about how to be still. There's a greater degree of value in meditation, even if it's just being quiet and listening to our own thoughts and being aware of what we're thinking and what we can do with that. I think right now it's fundamental to how it is that we bring. So in the time that we do have, we bring the best of ourselves to whatever business situation that we're in, including if we're starting something new at it, that creative flow that we have. And I think that's important. And there's another aspect of this I think that right now is vital, is this idea of courage and having the courage to want to do more as well. Overcoming isolation isn't just a matter of connectivity. Again, I want to go back to what I just said a few moments ago, which is using our connectivity wisely, because we can fill a lot of space. And I'm hearing from a lot of leaders that a lot of their space is being filled with just touching base. And I think there's a conversational context that we need to be aware of and using it to both get value from the time that we're providing. Yeah, and to be compassionate to one another. I think right now more than ever, I think that's an ingredient in business that is just beginning to rediscover the value of compassion in how we do business, and not to be victims, not to blame, and to see the world through a lens of compassion and gratitude.
Yeah, Edgar, I want to say a huge thank you. You know, those points are so important. You know, this conversation with you, talking about compassion and alignment and empathy and connectedness and humanity, and the conversation with Jessica about her construct of consciousness, and you know, there's some matchup with, and I was excited to have the two of you on stage together to get you in a conversation with each other, and we didn't manage that part, but
I was very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, just see the interchange that you both would potentially have in this one. You know, a lot of students will come and say, you know, how do I make this work? And they want to know the steps. You know, and I always see this idea of, you know, part of it is the steps will reveal themselves when you're ready for those steps. They're fairly simple, but that's not the meat and potatoes of how you make a business go.
Yeah, well, I've got this, innovation happens so in the moment. And if there's a gap between what we have and what we want and our current state, desired future state, perhaps then what we can also consider is that you get Jessica and I together, and the three of us can, you can conduct a shared interview or create a shared conversational space with all of us involved. And I think that would be fun as well.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, you know, for those alum and students and faculty and staff, is you and I are working together to try and get some executive education out the door. You've just started, you know, in this recent pandemic, you've just started a support group for CEOs and business leaders,
right?
Which we've put out there in space for our alumni to participate in, and we'll look forward to some of the more some of the new programming that we'll be putting together and offering as executive education. And I'm working with Jessica too to start to bring her in to start to offer these things for our students and our alumni. So alums, I'm hopeful that you'll continue to be connected, that you'll come and be a companion like Edgar. I mean, right now we have some processes going on where we've had co-teachers with our alumni. We've had alumni coming in to start new programs, and we're really excited about this new movement and what the future can look like. Edgar, I want to thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time here. And most importantly, I want to thank you for your grace. You know, the depth of thinking is inspirational to me. I hope that our alumni, faculty, staff, and connections find it so as well.
I think now you're being overly kind, and in reciprocity, what you're doing and the work at the Anderson College, I think is it's a unique place. It's a special place, and I'm just really happy that you invited me to be part of something so unique that we can make ever more so special in the future. This is a wonderful endeavor, and I'm very grateful to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Edgar. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, be well.
Thank you. You too.